Welcome to This Explainer. Look, if you've ever stared down the dense pages of the Bombardier Q400 Minimum Equipment List, the MEL, and just felt totally overwhelmed by the sheer volume of rules, well, you are in the exact right place. Today, we're going to break the whole thing down. We're turning a highly technical, pretty dry manual into a structured, sequential flight plan that's actually incredibly easy to grasp. We're talking effortless memorization here. Let's get into it. Here's our quick flight plan for today. 1. Introduction to the MEL. 2. Contents of the MEL. 3. Criteria for dispatch. 4. The ABCD rectification intervals. 5. Maintenance action procedures. And finally 6. Operations action and annexers. All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Introduction to the MEL and its foundational rules. So what exactly is the MLL for our Q400? It's not just some random list pulled out of thin air. It actually starts with the Master Minimum Equipment List, the MML, from DOT Canada. That master list shapes our highly regulated specific MLL. It's carefully tailored, combining that MML with Bombardier's own procedures to allow our aircraft to keep operating safely for a very limited time, even if certain non-critical items are out of commission. But listen, the absolute key phrase here to remember is without affecting safety. And that brings us to a massive philosophical distinction that you absolutely must have locked down. The MEL exists to ensure safe takeoffs from a maintenance base or an en route stop. What it is definitively not is an excuse to reduce safety just so you can limp the plane to a base for repairs. There is literally no compromise here. If the broken equipment makes the aircraft unairworthy for that specific flight, you don't fly. Simple as that. The MEL relies on strict limitations, alternative procedures, and substitutions to maintain a totally acceptable, rock-solid level of safety.
Moving right along to Section 2, Contents of the MEL, and what I like to call the obviously rule.
Okay, so how do you effortlessly memorize what's actually in this book? Use the obviously rule. Think about it. Things like wings, flaps, rudders, engines. These are obviously required for the airplane to fly, right? So they are not in the MEL. They must be working, period. On the completely opposite end of the spectrum, you have galley equipment or basic passenger convenience items. Those obviously aren't required for safe flight, so they aren't in the MEL either. What actually makes the cut into the MEL are the airworthiness items that can temporarily be broken prior to dispatch, but only if specific limitations are followed to the letter. So rule of thumb, if it's related to airworthiness and it's missing from the list, it is automatically required to be operative.
Now, when you're looking through the list, you're going to see these M and O symbols. M is for maintenance, O is for operations. The crucial thing to understand is that if these procedures are identified, they have to be performed prior to dispatching with MEL relief. And honestly, depending on the provisos, sometimes these specific procedures have to be done before every single flight. This is how we guarantee that even with a broken piece of equipment, the crew is actively maintaining the required safety and reliability of the aircraft.
Section 3. Criteria for dispatch. Basically, who actually makes the call to go?
The dispatch hierarchy is really fascinating because it's a tight, collaborative sequence. First up, the captain's call. The captain's decision takes ultimate precedence over everything. If they want an item fixed before flying, or maybe they need extra working equipment because the weather en route is terrible, their word is final. Backing them up is the quality manager, who monitors multiple MEL defects to make sure they don't stack up and degrade safety or overwhelm the crew. Then, an appropriately licensed aircraft maintenance engineer, or AME, officially invokes the MEL. An approved pilot can do this too, but only for items not requiring maintenance actions. Finally, the AME has to get on the phone or a walkie-talkie and notify flight dispatch and the pilot in command about any operational restrictions.
I absolutely love this quote from the manual because it is the ultimate safety trump card. Notwithstanding the MAL, an AME need not certify the aircraft for flight, or a pilot need not accept the aircraft for flight if it is considered that it is unsafe to do so. Despite all the regulations and procedures in the MAL, if a pilot or an AME gets that gut feeling that it's unsafe, they are explicitly empowered to just say no.
All right, Section 4, ABCD rectification intervals. Here is a massive memory trick for you.
Whenever equipment is deferred, there's a strict ticking clock on when it must be repaired. You can memorize this effortlessly with the ABCD rule of time. A simply means the repair time is as specified right there in the manual. B stands for a brief 3 consecutive calendar days. C means count to 10 consecutive calendar days. And D stands for a delayed 120 consecutive calendar days. Now, here is the secret to getting the math right. You always exclude the day the malfunction was recorded. So say a Category B defect gets written up at 10 hours UTC on January 26th. Your brief 3 days don't actually start ticking until midnight on the 26th. So you get the 27th, the 28th, and the 29th, with the hard deadline hitting exactly at midnight on January 29th.
Section 5. Maintenance action, procedures, and how we log all this stuff. So, we've covered the rules, the dispatch hierarchy, and those strict ABCD timelines. But you might be wondering, with all these deferred defects, warning placards, and specific procedures flying around, how do we actually keep track of it all on a Bombardier Q400 so nothing slips through the cracks?
Well, it all centers around the aircraft technical log. This is the master record where all releases and deferred defects are written down. When an item is officially deferred, the certifying personnel will make detailed annotations in the ADD, the Acceptable Deferred Log. This has all the defect details and those exact time limits we just talked about. But hey, what if your Q400 has to divert to a station out in the middle of nowhere that doesn't have technical staff? That is where the ACF, or Acceptable Carried Forward procedure, kicks in. The flight crew basically marks the sector record sheet as ACF, the captain signs off on it, and then they physically re-enter the defect onto the next sheet. It's a really clever, continuous chain that repeats until you finally reach an authorized certifying engineer who can officially clear it.
Finally, we hit Section 6, Operations, Actions, and Annexers, the final checkpoints.
Remember that O symbol we touched on earlier? Well, here's the kicker. If you see an O symbol in column 4 of the MEL, that means the operating crew has to actively complete a specific operations procedure, either in planning for the flight or operating with a broken item. And they can't just do it in their heads. They have to make a logged entry confirming they actually accomplished the procedure before they are even allowed to accept the aircraft.
And right at the very back of the MEL, you'll find these final, super strict rules. Annexure A lays out the explicitly acceptable ballast materials for the Q400, and Annexure B gives you the time-limited dispatch criteria, which frankly demand absolute strict compliance. It's these kinds of meticulous, highly organized details that keep the entire operation running smoothly and safely.
So I want to leave you with this thought. When you step back and look at the whole picture, the obviously rule, those strict ABCD timelines, the undeniable authority of the captain's call, it becomes incredibly clear just how massive the safety net of the MEL really is. It guarantees that even when our Bombardier Q400 isn't 100% perfect, it is still rigorously evaluated, restricted where necessary, and proven absolutely safe for the journey ahead before the wheels ever leave the tarmac. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I hope this playbook serves you well.